Hi, everyone. I am going to wait like a minute to get started just to make sure that everyone gets in okay, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the webinar. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started because it doesn't look like anyone else is coming in, but if they do, that's okay. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Oops. Awesome, okay. Awesome. So hello, everyone. My name is Celia, and welcome to the Statistics Solutions webinar on APA editing and how to avoid common mistakes. So this webinar is recorded, so you'll be able to watch it back later on our website. But if you have any questions throughout the PowerPoint, please go ahead and put them in the chat, and then I'll get to them if I see them, or if I don't see them in the middle of the PowerPoint, I'll get to them at the end. Finally, if you would like more information about how Statistics Solutions can help you with APA editing or just dissertation help in general, go ahead and email the email that's on my screen to set up a consultation. And the information on the screen will be also at the end of this PowerPoint too. So first things first, APA style, or the American Psychological Association, their rules and regulations for writing research. So it consists of kind of two main aspects. One of them is grammar and style, and the other one is references. And so we're going to start off this PowerPoint today with grammar. And then we'll move on to references, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the changes that have been made in APA 7th edition versus the 6th edition. Awesome. So first thing to keep in mind with APA writing style is your writing voice. And so APA style prefers the use of an active voice, or a structure in which the subject performs an action, rather than a passive voice in which the action is not clear. A good example of this is by using the researcher as the subject of the sentence, followed by the action, rather than starting this sentence with something along the lines of the study was conducted. So you want to say the researcher conducted the study in a controlled setting, rather than the study was conducted in a controlled setting. Sorry. This is because when you say the study, you know, the study was conducted by who? And so you just want to be specific. There are some exceptions to this though, as in chapter 4, when the emphasis is placed on the participants rather than the researcher. And again, to fix these kinds of passive sentences, you include the doer of the action in the sentence. So either the researcher or maybe a participant. Additionally, you want to avoid anthropomorphisms. Oh, somebody raised their hand. Let me look at that real quick. Oh, just kidding. Maybe. Okay, I know, I'll keep going. So you want to also avoid anthropomorphisms, meaning that you avoid speaking as if the study has found something, or that an article has discussed something. And so you want to, basically what this means is you want to avoid attributing characteristics to inanimate objects or ideas. So instead of saying the study found the following results, you would say something along the lines of the researcher found the following results. Or instead of saying the article discussed, you would use the researcher's name or maybe an article title and say Smith 2004 discussed this instead. Okay. There we go. Trying to change the slide. So the next thing that is really important in APA writing is tense. And so certain tenses are used at different times. And so some are appropriate and sometimes, and some are appropriate in other times. Generally, in the proposal stage, you're going to be writing your paper within the present or the future tense. And this is to denote that you have not conducted the study yet, but you are planning to in the future. However, once the proposal is approved, usually mentors will have people go back and change all of the writing to past tense. And then you're going to you're going to have your introduction in past tense, your literature review, as well as your methodology, and your results are all going to be in past tense. The only thing that's not going to be in past tense is going to be your last section, which is your discussion section, which are always concluded in the present tense. Awesome. Oh, looks like we have a question. I want to find out if authors' names are used only at the beginning. We're going to get to that in a little bit. So I'm going to actually hold off on that question. Awesome. Okay, so then always use past tense for referring to what a researcher did or found, because that study has always been done in the past. So you're not going to want to be referring to it as if it was in the future or in the present. Awesome. So next is capitalization. So when to use it and when not to use it is a really important distinction in APA. So capitalization is going to be used in all major words in titles and headings, such as like the titles of our chapters, titles of any tables or figures that you have within your paper. You're also going to use capitalization for journal titles. So if you're, referencing something and you're saying something along the lines of, or you're referencing the publisher or the journal that it was published in, that is going to always be capitalized. Finally, any instrumentation tests or surveys are also going to be capitalized, as well as like proper nouns, names of researchers, that fun stuff. Nouns that are followed by numbers as well. So if you're going to say research question 1, both research and question should be capitalized. Like I said, titles of any tests, questionnaires, surveys that you're going to use. So for example, if you're looking at like a multi-factor leadership questionnaire, you would capitalize multi-factor leadership and questionnaire. However, you are not going to be capitalizing any theories. So say you are looking at the misinformation effect, unless misinformation effect is at the first word of your sentence, you're not going to be capitalizing it throughout your paper. So that gets back into the next slide. So when not to use capitalizations. So when referencing articles or books or titles of anything, you're actually only going to capitalize the first word of the title, and then any words that come after a colon, a dash, or a period. And so here in this example, we can see, we have our names of our researchers here. Then we have first letter of the title of the article is capitalized. We have a colon, and then the letters after the colon is capitalized, but no other letters in the in the article title is capitalized. And then if you can see, like what we were talking about the last slide, so this journal title though, IBM Systems Journals, all of those words are going to be capitalized because that's the journal title rather than the article title. Okay, awesome. So other times when not to capitalize, like I was saying earlier, if you're using any names of laws or theories or models like cognitive behavior theory or misinformation effect, something like that, those are not going to be capitalized. And then shortened or generic titles of tests are also not going to be capitalized. So that would be something along the lines of, instead of saying a stress test, or instead of saying a, I can't think of a name of a instrument right now, but you could say stress test, as long as the stress test wasn't the actual name, you wouldn't capitalize that. Looks like there's another question. Oh, yeah, I can go back to basic grammar. Oops. Sorry, that was wrong way. Where was I? Here's, I think, the picture you wanted to take. This will also be available though on our website after today for reference. Okay. Okay. So moving on, sorry, I kind of went forward there a little bit, but so next is abbreviations. Abbreviations should be used if a certain title is used kind of more than 4 times in a paper, basically. So say you're looking at something like the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. Let's say that that's our example for today. If you're going to use the CDC or the Center for Disease Control and Prevention more than 3 times in a paper, then you should spell it out once completely, and then followed by, in parentheses, the acronym. So that way you tell your reader exactly what that acronym means, and that you will be using that acronym. And then from then on, after that first time, you're going to just use the acronym. So instead of saying Center for Disease Control and Prevention, every single time you want to say Center for Disease Control and Prevention, you're just going to say CDC. And so that's what's known as the 4 or more rule. And basically anytime that you're going to say it more than 4 times, you should probably use an acronym. And anytime that it's going to be less than 4 times, so 3 or less, it should probably just be spelled out in the paper rather than being abbreviated or made into an acronym. And so most of this slide is just kind of examples on when to use and when not to use it. And again, this will be up on the website for you guys as reference. Awesome. So the last important aspect of kind of grammar and style is the use of numbers. And so according to the APA rules, you can use numerals when the number is over 10, if it represents a time, date, or a score. So say you have a number of 35, you would just literally write a 3 and a 5. If you have anything under 9 or that number does not represent a time, date, or score, then you're actually going to write it out in words. So you're going to spell it out. So something along the lines of if you were to say, oh, we looked at a 2-year time, that would be the number 2 because you're talking about time, rather than saying, oh, we had 2 participants. In that case, I mean, you shouldn't have you should have more than 2 participants, but in that case, you would write out TWO. So anything under 9 that does not represent a time, date, or age or score is going to be, or exact sums of money as well, is going to be written out in words rather than in numbers. Awesome. So the next biggest aspect of APA is citations and references. So this is probably the biggest issue among people, making sure that you're up to date with these things, and just kind of all of the rules can get really nitpicky. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on this. Awesome. So it is important when discussing other people's ideas and works that you do not plagiarize. Instead, you should always be attempting to put the author's ideas into your own words, which what is known as paraphrasing instead. So a big tip that I always give people when reading through articles, trying to make sure that we don't plagiarize, is to always take notes on a research paper in your own words and never directly copy and paste from the text. So writing in your own words is not only going to help you better encode the information and understand it better, but it's also going to make you less likely to plagiarize. Another way to avoid plagiarism, and this is the biggest way to avoid plagiarism, is to always cite your sources. So even if you think something seems like a common piece of knowledge, like the sky is blue, you should really be having a source to back that up, because chances are you don't know that that's common knowledge. And you don't know if you're going to be plagiarizing from somebody thinking that that's common knowledge when it might not actually be. And so not only because of that, but just because we want to make sure that everyone gets the credibility for what they have produced, we want to be citing our sources at all times. And so using proper citation not only helps you not to plagiarize and gives people credit where credit is due. It also strengthens your credibility as a researcher, because it shows that you are willing to give people credit, when they deserve it. Okay. So there are kind of two main ways to reference articles within your paper. And so the first one is called a reference list. So this goes at the end of your paper, and it's an alphabetized list of all of the sources that you used within your data. And so APA has rules kind of depending on what kind of article you're looking at, if it's a web-based article, if it's a book-based article, or, anything like that. It has different rules that you can look up online on how to actually reference those things. So we won't be going through those kind of rules, but instead we're just going to be going through what should be included in a reference list. And so first off, we always want to alphabetize by a first author's last name. So we kind of ignore all of the other authors in the study when it comes to alphabetizing. We're just going to use the first author's last name. Make sure that you're always cross-checking with your in-text citations, which I will get to in a minute, kind of in-text citation stuff. Just to make sure that, your reference list and your in-text citations are always kind of matching up. Any online sources must include retrieval information, whether or not that's the actual database link or if it's a DOI format. However, within your actual citation, you're never going to write retrieved from. You're always just going to write either, period after the page number or the journal title journal title, volume number, period. And then you'd literally just put either the database link or just the DOI. And so for APA 6th edition, you'd used to just be able to write DOI and then all the numbers. But in 7th edition, you actually have to write the https://doi.org and then all the numbers, which is, nitpicky. Awesome. Anyway, so next piece of information is going to be your in-text citations. And so there are two ways to be citing your work within texts. citing other people's work within the text. And so the first one is to use the reference as the subject of the sentence. And so an example with that would be something along the lines of Smith et al. Then you always are going to put the date next to it, and then you'll just finish the sentence. So it would be Smith et al. 2012 found that blah, 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 blah. Or the other way to go about it is putting the reference at the end of the sentence. And so in that case, instead, you would say something along the lines of researchers found that, or the researchers, or, whatever subject you want to put, found that, blah, 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 blah. And then at the end of the sentence, before you put your period, in parentheses, you're going to put Smith et al., and then comma, and then the date that it was published. So any sources cited in text must also be found in the full reference section. And really, you should be using in-text citation almost any time that you're using a piece of it, or actually any time that you're using a piece of information that you have read, paraphrased from an original text, from a research paper, or anything like that. And in terms of when to use which way, so when to use either the reference as the subject of the sentence, or the reference at the end of the subject, or at the end of the sentence, that is up to your discretion as the writer. What's going to flow best, what's going to sound best for you. I personally, like to intersperse it within a paragraph. So sometimes I'll say like Smith et al. Found that, and then 2 sentences down, I'll put it at the end of the sentence. Okay, looks like someone raised their hand. So before I get into the next section, I will look at that. Oop. Awesome. Awesome. I allowed you to talk, so you should be able to just ask your question. If not, you can just put it in the chat.
I'm okay.
Hi. Do you have a question?
It is okay. I'm okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. That's on me. Awesome. Okay. So then let me go back. Perfect. So then let's, oops. Don't mean to ask to unmute you. Sorry about that. So next thing we're going to talk a little bit about is kind of the aspects of APA 7th edition that is different from the 6th edition. So every couple of years, APA puts out a new edition where they kind of change the rules on us just a tiny little bit. And it's always kind of really minuscule changes. And so these slides are just kind of some of the changes, some of the biggest changes between the 7th and the 6th edition. Awesome. So one of the biggest changes that there is kind of the heading levels. So in previous editions, it was not like this. The first couple headings are kind of the same as in previous editions, but really where we get the change is in the level 4 and level 5. But I'll go through each one with everyone. So first, level 1 is going to be something, the ones kind of along the lines of, this is your chapter 3, this is your chapter 4, this is your discussion section. So those are the ones that are going to be centered. They're going to be bold-faced, so in bold letters, and they're just going to be in regular title case heading. Any of the text after these headings are going to begin as a new paragraph. Level 2 is kind of similar, except for this is going to be flushed left, so this isn't going to be centered in the page. These are going to be kind of your levels of, this is my introduction paragraph. This is my data analysis plan paragraph. This is, my literature review paragraph. This is, where we're distinguishing from our level 1 headings into our level 2 headings. So, the things that we're going to write next. These are going to be flush left. It's also going to be bold and regular title case heading. And just like level 1, any text is going to begin as a new paragraph. So you're going to literally tab, enter, tab, and then start writing. Level 3, flush, this time it's going to be very similar to level 2, except for this is going to be italicized and bold rather than just bold. And so level 3 headings are stuff like, you know, if you want to write a heading that says assumption checks, if you want to write a heading that says, you know, Chromebox alpha, these are going to kind of be the headings. So we're going to get a little bit more specific within level 2. These are going to be within level 2, and kind of getting a little bit more specific. Again, the text begins as a new paragraph. So you're going to press enter, tab, and then start writing. So these are all very similar to APA 6th edition. Where we really get the differences here is these level 4 and level 5. This is kind of what's changed from 6th to 7th edition. For level 4, again, this is within, like if you had a tab within level 3. So say we said level 3 was our assumption checks. Level 4 would be something like normality. So we're going to indent it this time. So it's not going to be flush left, but it's also not going to be in the center. So you're going to press tab and it's going to be indented. And then it's going to be boldface, title case heading. And this time you're going to have a period at the end. And then after that period, you're going to just immediately start typing. So what it kind of looks like here on the screen, where, you know, these levels, we kind of have indented, and we start the text as a new paragraph. This paragraph is going to literally just start right after the period ends. And then finally, level 5 is going to be very similar to that, except for it's italicized. And level 5 headings are kind of rare. Unless you're really going into like super in depth, but they're good to know. Awesome. Okay, so another thing that they have added to the 7th edition is the use of the singular they. So we are using singular they if gender is unknown or irrelevant to participants, or to the study in general, or if we're talking about a person who uses they as their personal pronouns. And also they have added, you know, preferring first person language. So first person language means that you are talking about people with their kind of personhood first, and then whatever they are dealing with second. So a good example of that would be saying a man with epilepsy rather than an epileptic man. Or you could say something along the lines of people living in poverty rather than the poor. So you always want to be really specific with first person language. You know, you want to be saying something along the lines of, you know, Korean Americans versus Asian Americans, or cisgender men versus just men in general. Awesome. So kind of tables and figures didn't change too much between APA 7th and 6th edition, but I do think that they're very important. And kind of some of the biggest issues that I think some people have. So I wanted to add them in. So tables and figures are always going to be formatted in parallel, and they're kind of always going to follow the same format. And so what that format is that you're always going to have a table number. And so that's going to be bolded and kind of at the top here. So that's something along the lines of table 1 or figure 1. Immediately underneath that, you're going to have a title. And so that's what you're going to call your table or figure. It's usually a description. So in this case, you know, I have the title as participant demographics, but say you were, you know, had a figure and it was a scatter plot, you would say something along the lines of scatter plot of, and then whatever your two variables that you're looking at the scatter plot with. So scatter plot with variable X and variable Y. So that's always going to be italicized, and as like we talked about earlier with the capitalization, each one of the words in this title is going to be capitalized at all times. So if we had something along the lines of scatter plot of variable X and variable Y, scatter plot would be capitalized, of would be capitalized, variable X would be capitalized, variable Y would be capitalized. From there, you're going to go into the heading, which is just the names of the columns. So like, for example, this column 1 would be something along the lines of, you know, you could say this is variable name or participant ID or something. Column 2, you know, that could be, time, pre-post, something along those lines. And then finally underneath this gets into the body, and that's actually where you put your numbers. So if this was variable name, this was variable X and this is variable Y, then, you're going to put all the numbers under variable X here and all the numbers under variable Y under this column. Awesome. So kind of continuing on with tables and figures, you want to limit the amount of borders that you use within your tables for clarity. And so APA actually says that you cannot use any vertical borders. And so all of your borders should be horizontal. As a rule, I would say that the only borders that you should really have, these horizontal borders, is at the very end. So this bottom border here. And then a border at the top, and then a border to denote between what is the heading and what is the actual body of your table. So as you can see, between these two variables here and these two variables here, there are no horizontal borders. Finally, tables and figures can either be placed within your text of the paper or within the appendix section. APA doesn't really care which one you do, so that is up to you as researcher discretion. Awesome. So in-text citations, get a little bit more into this because there was some differences between the 6th and 7th edition of in-text citations. And so the biggest difference is that for in-text citations now, if you have any source with more than 3 authors, then you are always just going to use the first author's last name and then the words et al with a period afterwards. And so the only exception to this is if 2 papers have the same first author listed with like the same date of publication. So that would be the only exception. So like if Smith et al, or if Smith, whoever Smith is, wrote, 2 papers in the same year and was first author on both of those papers, that would be the only case in which you're not going to use that et al modifier. However, that's not the case with your references section. So with your references section, you should be including all authors up to 20 in the reference list. And so the only time you should be using et al in your references list is when you have more than 20 authors in a paper, which does happen. It's not absurd to think that, but it's not as common. So you should be listing all of your authors in the reference section, but you do not need to do that in your in-text citation. Additionally, what's different from 6th to 7th edition, we talked a lot about it a little bit earlier, but you never say retrieved from when you're using a DOI or a URL. The only exception of that is if you're using an online source like a website, and then you can say like retrieved on this date, but you should never be using retrieved from and then putting a URL or a DOI. Finally, for the references section, your DOI numbers or your URLs should always be presented as a hyperlink for electronic sources. So if you got it from a website and you have the URL for that website, just make sure it's a hyperlink so that your committee members or anyone reading the paper is able to just click on it and be able to read whatever article you're talking about. Awesome. So kind of at the end of this, just some helpful tips kind of to go throughout. Keep up with formatting from the very beginning. It's always easier to make or fix mistakes if you've kind of kept up with everything at the beginning rather than, writing it the way you want to write it and then having to change everything at the end just to meet APA style. Also, you should be keeping a running list of references, and you should regularly check to make sure that your in-text citations matches your reference list. So citation managers like EndNote can be very helpful despite some pitfalls. So they don't always cite things completely correctly in APA style. So if you are going to use citation managers like that, you know, just make sure that you're keeping an eye on those citations and just making sure that you know the rules for what you're citing. And then finally, you know, no one ever has memorized the APA edition, like 7th edition manual. I mean, maybe there are some people out there, but it's a reference manual rather than something that you need to memorize. I know very few people who know every single little rule of APA. And so keeping a copy of the 7th edition or 7th manual nearby can really be worth the investment, even though it can be a little pricey sometimes. Just so that, you know, if you ever have a question, that manual kind of answers almost all of them. You know, you're able to just pick it up, rifle through it, and kind of find the answer you're looking for. So that's kind of all of the information that I have for you guys today. So let me go ahead and look at some of the question and answers or the Q&A section, see if I can answer some of your guys' questions. Okay, so first thing, do you only place the first name or first 3 names in in-text citation? Yeah, so with APA, so let me reread the question again. Do you only place the first name or the first 3 names in in-text citations? So for in-text citations, you're only going to do the author's first author's last name. So that was not the case in 6th edition. In 6th edition, you had to write the first 3 names, but in 7th edition, because they love us and they changed it finally, you only have to do the author's, the first author's last name, and then the qualifier et, all al period at the end, followed by the date that it was published. Awesome. Next question. I want to find out. Okay, so this was, I want to find out if the author's names are only used at the beginning. So if you mean in a reference section, or within your actual text. So if you're talking about the authors within the text, and you're saying something along the lines of Smith et al. Found that, and then you kind of say what they found. If you're not adding any new information from that paper after you've referenced that person once, you do not have to reference them again, as long as it is clear to the reader that if you continue talking about the paper, that is the paper that you're talking about. So if, you know, if you say something along the lines of Smith et al. Found that blah, 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 and then you say something along the lines of they also found, you don't have to reference that, like they also found, you don't have to put a reference at the end of that sentence. But if a couple paragraphs later, then you're talking about them again, and then you say, you know, Smith et al. Also found, if it's not clear that you're still talking about that Smith et al. Paper, you might want to reference it again. But let's see, I have something in the chat as well. If the article has 2 authors, do we use both authors' name in the in-text citation? Nope. If the article has more than 2 authors, it's going to be an et al. You're only using first author's last name in your in-text citations now, which in my opinion is amazing, because I hated writing out all the authors, even if it was just 2. Anyway, so next one. For the reference list, should all of the journal articles include a hyperlinked retrieval information? Only if you have that information. So if, you know, if your professor kind of gave you a printed out version of the article, and you don't actually have that retrieval information, maybe you only have the DOI, then it doesn't need to be hyperlinked. If you did find it in an online format and you do have that retrieval information, then yes, it should always be hyperlinked. Okay, more in the Q&A. Yeah, so can we please get access to the recording? Absolutely. So this recording will be up on our website, I believe in a couple days, but I'm not entirely sure how many days it usually It usually takes, but it's probably within 1 to 2 days that you'll have access to this information. And then finally, can you discuss citing multiple references within an in-text citation? Absolutely. So for multiple references, so say if you talked about within the same sentence, something that references 2 different papers or 3 different papers, you're actually going to put, that's when you're going to use the reference at the end of the sentence. So let me go back up to, that example. I always pass it. There we go. Okay. So you're actually going to use that, the reference at the end of the sentence here. And then just between each of the author's names. So say you're looking at Smith et al., Patterson et al., and John et al. I don't know, I'm just making up names. What you're going to do, and say all of them have multiple authors, but what you would do is within this paragraph, you would say Smith et al., 2012, then you would put a semicolon, and then you would add the next author title et al. If there's multiple authors, and then the date, and then you would put another semicolon for however many sources you have. So yeah, I hope that answered that question. Yes, so it should be in text citation, it should be alphabetized just like in your reference list. Yeah, so it says do not include DOI. And so let me rephrase that. So the format of the DOI has changed. So it's not that you don't include it. It's that in 6th edition, you were able to just write like the DOI period and then just write all the numbers kind of behind it. In 7th edition, it actually asks you to kind of add this first part. So the https://doi.org dash, and then you write all the numbers that go on with the DOI. So it's not that you don't include the DOI. It's that you're kind of including it differently. And then what it says is do not include retrieved from with the DOI. So in 6th edition, you could write retrieved from DOI dot and then kind of all the numbers. Instead, you're literally just going to put the DOI. You're just going to put https DOI, put all the DOIs, and you're just not going to say retrieved from this time. Okay, awesome. Let's see. I don't, does anyone have any other questions? It doesn't look like there's any other questions coming in. I kind of did answer all the questions in the Q&A, even though it says I didn't. I'm not amazing with Zoom, keeping up with the notifications of it. But yeah, if anyone else doesn't have any questions, then that is kind of it for this presentation. So let me go to the last slide and kind of just show you guys, kind of information for additional support. So if any of y'all have, want any more information on APA editing, anything to do with, your dissertation, whether or not that's the introduction, the literature review, your methodology, results, discussion, any of that, our company, Statistics Solutions, is a full service dissertation consulting company. And so we provide graduate students with support on their dissertation and scholarly projects. So if you guys are interested in working with us for any step of your graduate program needs, please reach out for a complimentary 30-minute consultation Monday through Friday with my boss, Janine, and her information is up on the screen here. Awesome. And then my coworker Sierra here has added some more free dissertation resources to the chat for everyone. Let's see. Okay, awesome. And then I'll just leave this information up for maybe a minute or two so everyone can write it down. And then let's see. Yes, the consultation should be free of charge. It's a free 30-minute consultation, and then anything from that would be where you're paying money. Okay, awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Yeah, like I said, I'll keep this up on the screen for just a minute or two more, and then I'll probably go ahead and end this webinar. But I appreciate everyone for stopping by and asking some really great questions. Yes, our company does offer hourly rates. So if you don't want to pay for a full results section or a full methodology section, you could just sign on for 1 or 2 hours. Awesome. And again, in the retrieval list, if you have, or in the reference list, if you have that retrieval information, every source should have it. If you don't have that retrieval information, you don't need to add it. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share then. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you.